After teaching sixth graders for 8 exhausting hours, I dragged myself home only to find a padlock on our pantry door. My daughter-in-law Tara stood there smirking, designer purse still on her arm. "It's so you don't touch our things," she announced, as if I were a misbehaving child instead of the woman who had given them $30,000 for their down payment. I just smiled, which clearly unnerved her. By sunrise, that lock would be gone, and what I'd leave in its place would change everything forever. I remember the day I handed James and Tara that check for $30,000. It represented 40 years of memories sold with my little craftsman home, the place where I'd raised my son after my husband Tom died when James was only 7. I'd taught him to ride a bike in that driveway, helped him with algebra at that kitchen table, and watched him graduate high school from that front porch. But times change. And at 65, I was ready for a new chapter. "Mom, you don't have to do this," James had said when I presented the check. But his eyes told a different story. The young couple had been struggling to come up with the down payment for their 2-story colonial in a good school district. "We can pay you back," Tara had added quickly, though we all knew that was unlikely on their salaries. James worked in marketing for a local company, and Tara was an administrative assistant at a law firm. "Nonsense," I'd replied. "Consider it an investment in our future together." The plan was simple and seemed perfect. I would sell my home, contribute to their down payment, and live with them in their new house. I would have my own bedroom and bathroom, help with utilities and groceries, and be able to save the rest of my money for retirement. We'd be a family, supporting each other. And for the first few months, it worked beautifully. I continued my job teaching 6th grade English at Lincoln Elementary, a position I'd held for 42 years. I cooked dinners, most evenings, traditional recipes that James had always loved. Tara seemed grateful for the help, especially after long days at work. "This pot roast is amazing, Eileen," she'd said one evening in those early days, serving herself a second helping. My mom never cooked like this. I'd beamed with pride, happy to be useful, to be needed. "It's nothing fancy, just good, simple food made with love," I'd replied. But as autumn turned to winter, something shifted. I first noticed it when I came home to find my collection of family photos had been removed from the living room mantel. "They didn't match our aesthetic," Tara explained, not meeting my eyes. "I put them in your room. I found them stuffed in a shoebox under my bed." The vintage frame holding my wedding photo was cracked. Then came the complaints about my cooking. "Do you have to use so much garlic?" Tara would ask, wrinkling her nose. "And the kitchen is such a mess afterward." I started cleaning as I cooked, wiping every surface, but it was never enough. "Your food smells linger," she'd say. "James and I are trying to eat cleaner anyway." One Tuesday in January, I arrived home from school carrying groceries. I'd bought ingredients to make James's favorite beef stew, a recipe his father had loved. "What's all this?" Tara asked, eyeing my bags with suspicion. "Just some groceries for dinner this week," I replied, putting potatoes and carrots in the vegetable drawer. "We don't have space for all your stuff," she said. "The pantry is already packed." I looked at the nearly empty pantry, confused. There seems to be plenty of room. That evening, while taking out the trash, I noticed something odd in the garbage can, a grocery bag filled with the very items I'd bought the previous week. Unopened pasta, canned tomatoes, flour, still in their packaging, all thrown away. I pulled one out, bewildered. Why would anyone waste perfectly good food? The next morning, I confronted Tara as she prepared to leave for work. "Did you throw away my groceries?" I asked directly. Her face hardened. "Your old people food takes up too much space and smells weird. We don't want it here." "Old people food? You mean the same recipes James has eaten his whole life?" "Well, his tastes have changed," she snapped. "You should just eat at school. Most teachers do, right?" That evening, I tried talking to James. He'd always been a gentle soul, quick to laugh, slow to anger. But when I mentioned the discarded groceries, his face closed off. "Mom, you know how small the kitchen is," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe it would be easier if you didn't bring so much stuff home." Easier for whom? I asked, feeling my heart crack a little. For everyone, he replied. Tara feels like you're taking over her kitchen. Her kitchen, not our kitchen. I nodded slowly, swallowing the hurt. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Not really. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, mourning not just the loss of my cooking privileges, but the realization that my son, my sweet James, had chosen sides. And it wasn't mine. I adapted because that's what teachers do. We adjust to new administrations, changing curriculums, different student needs. I started eating lunch in the faculty lounge instead of bringing leftovers from home. I limited my grocery shopping to a few items that could fit in one small shelf Tara had generously designated as mine in the refrigerator. Martha, who taught science across the hall from my classroom, noticed I was staying later at school. Everything okay at home, Eileen? She asked one afternoon as we graded papers side by side. Martha had been at Lincoln Elementary almost as long as I had. Her silver hair was always perfectly styled, and her warmth made her beloved by students and staff alike. Just some adjustments, I replied vaguely. Adjustments at 65 are harder than at 35, she observed wisely. Want to talk about it? Over coffee in her classroom, I found myself sharing everything. The groceries, the photos, the subtle and not so subtle ways Tara was pushing me out of their daily life. Have you tried connecting with her? Martha suggested. Maybe find some common ground? Taking Martha's advice, I approached Tara one Saturday morning. She was scrolling through her phone at the kitchen island, a half-empty coffee cup beside her. I was thinking, I began carefully. I could teach you some recipes if you'd like, ones that James loved growing up. She barely glanced up. No thanks. We're trying to eat organic and gluten-free now. I could adapt the recipes, I offered. Eileen, she said, finally looking at me. I think we both know I'm not interested in your Depression-era cooking tips. No offense. I retreated to my room, which was becoming my only sanctuary in the house. I'd noticed other changes, too. My books had disappeared from the family room shelves, replaced by decorative objects Tara had ordered online. The quilt I'd made was removed from the back of the couch, deemed too country for their modern aesthetic. My presence in the common areas was being systematically erased. Meanwhile, Tara's shopping habits seemed at odds with their supposed budget concerns. New furniture appeared regularly. Designer handbags, expensive wine. One day, a delivery truck brought a Peloton exercise bike that cost more than 3 months of my pension checks. It's an investment in our health, Tara explained, when I expressed surprise at the purchase. Late one night, I overheard them arguing about money. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices carried through the heating vent. We can't afford all this, Tara. James sounded frustrated. The credit cards are maxed out. Your mother can help more, Tara insisted. She's just sitting on her retirement money while living here practically free. She gave us $30,000 for the down payment, James reminded her. And she pays for groceries and utilities. Well, it's not enough, Tara snapped. Not if we want to maintain a certain lifestyle. The next day, checking my email, I noticed an alert from my credit card company about unusual activity. When I logged in, I was shocked to see charges I didn't recognize. Restaurant bills from places I'd never been. Clothing stores I never shopped at. And oddly, charges from days when I was teaching, and Tara had said she and James were too busy to include me in their dinner plans. I scrolled through months of statements, finding thousands of dollars in unauthorized charges. With trembling hands, I printed the evidence, highlighting each fraudulent transaction. Even worse, I discovered multiple purchases on my Amazon account that I hadn't made. Designer sunglasses, expensive skincare, items shipped to our address but that I'd never seen. When I confronted Tara, showing her the statements, she didn't even deny it. You said you wanted to help with expenses, she said with a shrug. This is helping. I never authorized you to use my credit cards, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Don't be so dramatic, Eileen. We're family. What's yours is ours. I waited until James came home to raise the issue again, certain my son would see the clear boundary violation. Mom, he said after Tara explained her version of events, I thought you had offered to help with some of the extras. Didn't you say you wanted to contribute to our lifestyle since you're living here? Not like this, James. I never gave permission for anyone to use my cards. You're probably just forgetting, Tara interjected smoothly. You've seemed a bit confused lately. Haven't you noticed, James? The look they exchanged sent a chill through me. It was as if they had discussed me, my mental state, behind my back. My son was allowing his wife to gaslight me, and worse, he was participating. I think we're all tired, James said finally. Let's talk about this another time. But I knew then that something fundamental had broken between us. The son I raised would never have dismissed financial abuse so casually. The question was, what had happened to him? And what was I going to do about it? As winter thawed into spring, I found myself retreating further into the safe harbor of Lincoln Elementary. For 42 years, those cinder block walls had witnessed my growth from a nervous first-year teacher to a confident veteran educator. There, at least, I was still respected. Miss Peterson, will you read my poem? 12-year-old Amber asked one morning, her eager eyes seeking approval. I worked on it all weekend. I'd be honored, I replied, taking the carefully handwritten page. These moments sustained me. The trust of children, the camaraderie of colleagues who valued my experience rather than seeing it as something to dismiss. Principal Doug Warren, a tall man with a booming laugh who had once been my student, often stopped by my classroom. The living legend of Lincoln, he called me affectionately. When I'm having a rough day, I remember how you handled that fire drill disaster of '97, and I think, what would Eileen do? In early May, the school held its annual Teacher Appreciation Luncheon. I was stunned to receive a standing ovation when Doug announced I'd taught 3 generations of families in our district. Eileen Peterson doesn't just teach English, he said. She teaches resilience, integrity, and the power of showing up, day after day, for the children who need her. Colleagues I'd mentored over the decades shared stories of my impact. Former students, now adults with children of their own, sent video messages of gratitude. I fought back tears, overwhelmed by the contrast between my professional life, where I was valued, and my home life, where I had become an inconvenience to be managed. That afternoon, there was a half-day for teacher development, so I arrived home earlier than usual. The house was quiet, but I could hear voices from the backyard deck. Thinking I'd join James and Tara for some rare family time, I headed toward the sliding glass door. Then I heard my name. Eileen is getting worse, Tara was saying. Yesterday I found her journal. You should read what she writes about us. My steps faltered. My journal? My private thoughts that I kept in my bedside drawer? I feel bad for her, James replied. But some of the things she says are pretty hurtful. I stood frozen, heart pounding. They had invaded my privacy, read my personal reflections, my raw emotions as I processed the changing dynamics in our home. She called me controlling, James. And she said you've changed, that you're not the son she raised. Is that the kind of toxic negativity we want in our home? What are you suggesting? James sounded tired. I'm saying maybe she's too sensitive to live with other people. Maybe it's time to consider alternatives. I must have made a sound, because they both turned. Tara's face showed no shame at being caught discussing me. If anything, she looked triumphant. Eileen, she said smoothly. We were just talking about you. I heard, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm inside me. You read my journal. It was open on your bed, she lied effortlessly. No, it wasn't. It was in my drawer. Mom, James intervened. You've seemed unhappy lately. We're concerned. Concerned enough to violate my privacy, but not concerned enough to address why I might be unhappy? I asked. See what I mean? Tara said to James. So defensive. Maybe it's an age thing. In that moment, I saw something ugly in my daughter-in-law's expression. Not just dislike, but contempt. I think I'll go to my room, I said quietly. That's probably best, Tara agreed. Oh, and I've moved your cooking things from the kitchen cabinets. They're in a box outside your door. We need the space." That evening, I heard them moving around the kitchen, laughing, the clink of wine glasses and the smell of takeout food drifting under my door. I wasn't invited to join them, hadn't been for weeks. The next morning, I left for school early, unable to face another cold interaction. I threw myself into teaching, guiding my students through the intricacies of literary analysis with an enthusiasm I didn't quite feel. "Miss Peterson," asked Travis, a bright-eyed boy in the front row, "why do people in stories always learn their lesson at the end? Why not at the beginning?" "Because growth requires struggle," I answered. "We have to earn our wisdom through experience, often painful experience." I thought about my own situation. What wisdom was I earning through this painful experience? What lesson was I meant to learn? By the time I arrived home that afternoon, exhausted from a full day of parent conferences, I had no answers. Until I saw the pantry door. A shiny new padlock secured it. The key, nowhere in sight. Tara stood nearby, watching for my reaction. "What's this?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "It's a lock," she replied, her tone suggesting I was slow-witted. "It's so you don't touch our things." "Our things? You mean the food in our shared home? James and I pay the mortgage. We buy the groceries now. We don't need you eating our food or messing up our organization." I looked at my son, who had appeared in the doorway. Surely he would object to this obvious cruelty. "Mom," he began, not meeting my eyes, "Tara feels we need clearer boundaries." "Boundaries?" I echoed, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "Yes," Tara interjected. "Boundaries. Something you struggle with. This will help teach the old lady where she belongs in this house." The casual cruelty stunned me into silence. I simply nodded, turned, and walked to my bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. They thought they had won. They thought I was defeated. But as I sat on my bed, staring at the family photo on my nightstand, something shifted inside me. A lifetime of accommodation and peacekeeping gave way to a simpler, clearer truth. This was not right, and I did not have to accept it. I smiled to myself, a plan already forming. By sunrise, that lock would be gone, and what I'd leave in its place would change everything forever. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake, replaying the last 6 months in my mind, trying to pinpoint exactly when things had gone so wrong. Had I missed warning signs about Tara? Had James always had this capacity for cruelty? Or was he being manipulated? Around 3 in the morning, I found myself thinking of Tom, my husband, gone now for over 30 years. What would he say about all this? Tom had been a gentleman, but firm in his convictions. Eileen, he'd told me once when I was upset about a conflict with a neighbor, being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. Standing up for yourself is an act of self-respect. I'd spent decades putting others first. My students, my son, even my demanding daughter-in-law. Perhaps it was finally time to put myself first. As dawn approached, I reached for my phone and called my sister Judy in Sarasota. Despite the early hour, she answered on the second ring. "Eileen? Is everything okay?" Her voice, so similar to mine but with a slight southern drawl from her 40 years in Florida, was instantly concerned. "No," I admitted. "It's not." For the next hour, I poured out everything. The financial exploitation, the emotional abuse, the pantry lock that had become the symbol of my powerlessness. "Come stay with me," Judy offered immediately. "I have the guest room all made up. You can fly down today." "I can't leave my students mid-year," I replied. "But I'm not staying in that house another day." "What will you do?" "I have a plan," I told her. "But I need to make some calls first." My next call was to the bank where I'd withdrawn the $30,000 for James and Tara's down payment. I needed documentation of that transaction and any paperwork showing the terms of our arrangement. "Mrs. Peterson," the bank manager said after pulling up my records, "we have the withdrawal on file, but there's no loan agreement or contract. Was this a gift or a loan?" "It was an investment," I explained. "In exchange for my contribution, I was to have a place in their home." Without documentation, it might be difficult to recoup those funds, he warned. I understand, I replied. But I need the record of the transaction, please. After school that day, I met Martha for coffee. Her concern was evident as soon as she saw my face. You look like you haven't slept, she observed. I haven't, I confirmed, then told her about the pantry lock. Martha's outrage was validating. That's elder abuse, she declared firmly. Financial and emotional. I don't know if I'd go that far, I hedged. I would, said a voice behind us. A tall woman with short gray hair and piercing blue eyes approached our table. Sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Diane Sutton. I used to practice elder law before I retired. Martha smiled. Diane is my neighbor. She's brilliant and terrifying in a courtroom. Former courtroom, Diane corrected, sitting down uninvited but not unwelcome. Now I just terrify my garden club when they try to change the bylaws. For the next hour, Diane listened as I recounted my situation, occasionally asking sharp, specific questions. Do you have any texts or emails discussing the financial arrangement? She asked. A few, I replied, and bank records showing my contribution. Good. And the credit card fraud? I have statements showing unauthorized charges. Diane nodded thoughtfully. You have options, Eileen. Legal ones. But first, you need somewhere safe to go. That's when Principal Doug joined our impromptu meeting, stopping by our table on his way out of the coffee shop. Sorry to interrupt, he said. But I was wondering if you'd made a decision about next year, Eileen. The school board is asking about retirement plans. I'm not ready to retire, I replied firmly. But I am looking for a new living situation. Doug's eyebrows rose. Actually, I might be able to help with that. My wife and I own a small apartment building near the school. We have a one-bedroom unit opening up next week. Nothing fancy, but clean and quiet. Doug, I said, feeling emotion well up, that would be perfect. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. I had a plan, support, and most importantly, I had remembered my own worth. That evening, I quietly began packing essential items. Clothes, important documents, irreplaceable photos and keepsakes. I worked methodically, careful not to draw attention from James or Tara, who were watching television downstairs. Around midnight, I checked my email and found a message that made my blood run cold. It was from Tara to several family friends, accidentally copied to my address. We're increasingly concerned about Eileen's mental state, she had written. She's showing signs of early dementia, forgetfulness, paranoia, accusing us of taking her things. We're considering having her evaluated for her own safety. If any of you have experienced this with your parents, please let us know the best approach. I sat staring at the screen, hands trembling with shock and fury. This wasn't just cruel, it was calculated. They were laying groundwork to have me declared incompetent. The next morning, I met with Diane again, showing her the email. This changes things, she said gravely. They're not just being unkind, they're potentially setting up for financial exploitation on a larger scale. Your retirement accounts could be at risk if they pursue guardianship. What should I do? Document everything. Forward that email to me. And accelerate your timeline for moving out. Back at school, I borrowed a small toolkit from Sam, our maintenance supervisor. Just need to fix a sticky drawer, I explained. During my planning period, I wrote the most important letter of my life. 6 pages, detailing every instance of mistreatment. The financial contribution to their home. The unauthorized credit card charges. The systematic emotional abuse. The invasion of my privacy. And finally, the evidence of their plan to question my competence. I attached bank statements, credit card records, screenshots of the damning email, and a formal notice, drafted with Diane's help, asserting my right to recover my financial investment in their property. That evening, I confirmed arrangements with Doug. The apartment would be ready tomorrow. Martha and her husband would help me move the few larger items I was taking. As I finished preparations, I felt strangely calm. Not angry, not even sad anymore. just resolved. Tom had always said I was strongest when backed into a corner. As I sealed the envelope containing my letter, I knew he would be proud of what I was about to do. I woke before my alarm, the gray pre-dawn light filtering through my curtains. For a moment, I felt the weight of what lay ahead, the finality of the step I was about to take. Then I remembered the pantry lock, the symbol of my exclusion from what should have been my home, and my resolve returned. The house was silent as I slipped down to the kitchen, toolkit in hand. It took only minutes to remove the padlock using the small bolt cutters Sam had included, just in case your drawer is really stuck. The lock came away easily, almost as if surrendering. I placed my letter where the lock had been, secured with clear tape. 6 pages that represented not just a documentation of wrongs, but my declaration of independence. Looking around the kitchen one last time, I felt a surprising lack of attachment. This had never become my home. Not really. My home was where I was valued, respected, and loved. I carried my 2 suitcases and a box of personal items to my car, making one final trip for my teaching materials and laptop. As I backed out of the driveway in the strengthening morning light, I glanced at the house that had cost me $30,000 and months of dignity. "Goodbye, James," I whispered. "I hope someday you understand." Doug was waiting at the apartment building, a 2-story brick structure, 3 blocks from Lincoln Elementary. "Sorry it's not fancy," he said, handing me the keys. "My wife would have had the place filled with flowers if she wasn't visiting her mother in Ohio." "It's perfect," I assured him, stepping into the small but sunny 1-bedroom unit. The hardwood floors gleamed with fresh polish. The kitchen was tiny but functional. It had everything I needed. "Take your time settling in," Doug said. "I've told the office you might be late today." "No," I replied firmly. "I'll be on time. My students shouldn't have to adjust their learning around my personal crisis." Teaching that day required every ounce of professionalism I'd cultivated over 42 years. I led discussions on poetry analysis, reviewed grammar concepts, and helped students outline their final essays, all while wondering what was happening at the house. Had they found the letter yet? How would they react? During lunch, Martha brought me a sandwich from the deli across the street. "Any word?" she asked, sitting beside me in the faculty lounge. I checked my phone. 6 missed calls from James. No messages. "That's telling," she observed. By 7th period, the calls had increased to 12, along with multiple text messages that grew increasingly desperate. "Mom, where are you? Call me as soon as possible. Mom, seriously, we need to talk. Please come home. We can work this out. You can't just leave like this. What about all your things?" I didn't respond. There would be time for conversations later, but only on my terms. After dismissal, I was erasing the whiteboard when Amber, my sensitive poetry writer, approached my desk. "Miss Peterson, are you okay? You seem sad today." "Children notice everything. I'm going through some changes," I told her honestly. "But I'm okay. Change can be hard and good at the same time." She nodded solemnly. "Like when my parents got divorced. It was scary, but now everyone is happier." "Exactly like that," I agreed. As she left, the school secretary appeared in my doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Eileen, you have a visitor. It's a woman named Tara. She says she's your daughter-in-law. She seems upset." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "Please tell Doug," I said quietly. Seconds later, before the secretary had even left, Tara burst into my classroom. Her normally perfect appearance was disheveled. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and in her trembling hands, she clutched my letter. "How dare you?" she hissed, waving the papers. "How dare you leave like this and write these lies?" I remained seated at my desk, hands folded calmly. "They're not lies, Tara. They're documented facts. Everything in that letter is true. You can't prove any of this. And you can't just abandon your son." "I haven't abandoned James. I've removed myself from an abusive situation." "Abusiva?" she scoffed. "You're being dramatic. Financial exploitation is abuse," I said steadily. So is emotional manipulation. And attempting to have someone declared incompetent for your own gain is both abusive and potentially criminal. Her face paled. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. And so will a judge if necessary. You ungrateful old, she began, voice rising. That's quite enough. Principal Doug stood in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the exit. His normally friendly face was stern. This is a school, he said firmly. If you can't conduct yourself appropriately, you'll need to leave. This doesn't concern you, Tara snapped. When you burst into my school and harass my staff, it absolutely concerns me. Doug's tone left no room for argument. Now, you can leave voluntarily, or I can call our resource officer to escort you out. Tara looked from Doug to me, then back again. This isn't over, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. Actually, I replied, it is. Everything else will be handled through proper channels. Please don't come to my workplace again. After she left, Doug checked on me. Are you okay? Do you need to go home? Home. Such a complex word now. I have one more class, I said. My advanced reading group. I'd rather stay. He nodded, understanding. I'll be in my office if you need anything. And Eileen? I'm proud of you. As my final students of the day filed in, eager for our discussion of To Kill a Mockingbird, I felt something unexpected beneath the turmoil. Strength. For decades, I'd helped young people find their voices. Today, I'd finally reclaimed my own. The apartment felt strange that first evening. Smaller than my room at James and Tara's, but somehow more spacious. Perhaps because it was entirely mine. No one could tell me what to cook or where to put my things. No one would invade my privacy or make me feel unwelcome. Judy called around 7, her voice tight with concern. How was your day? Did they react to your letter? Tara showed up at school, I told her. She was angry, but Doug intervened. And James? I sighed. Just phone calls and texts. I haven't responded yet. Good, Judy said firmly. Make him wait. Let him feel a fraction of the anxiety you've been living with. After we hung up, I wandered around my new space, arranging the few belongings I'd brought. A knock at the door startled me. For a moment, I feared it might be Tara again. But when I peeked through the peephole, I saw Judy herself, suitcase in hand. Surprise, she said when I opened the door. You didn't think I'd let you go through this alone, did you? My sister had flown up from Florida, leaving her husband to manage their cats and garden. We stayed up late, talking about everything and nothing, the way we had as girls sharing a bedroom. I never liked Tara, Judy admitted. From the moment I met her at the wedding, something felt off. I wanted to believe she made James happy, I replied. Maybe that blinded me. The next morning, Judy insisted on accompanying me to school, just in case she shows up again, then spent the day helping set up my apartment. By evening, the small space felt more like home, with Judy's touches adding warmth. She'd even brought a quilt our grandmother had made, rescued from my hope chest that had been relegated to James's basement. Martha and her husband Dave arrived with dinner and additional support. As we ate lasagna around my new secondhand table, I felt surrounded by a different kind of family. One built on mutual respect and genuine caring. I've been researching your options, Diane said, joining us after dinner. You have a strong case for recovering your investment in their house. The bank records clearly show the money came from you, and several witnesses can attest to the understanding that it was in exchange for a place to live. I don't want to bankrupt them, I said. I just want what's fair. Fair would be the full $30,000 plus interest and emotional damages, Judy interjected. Let's start with the principal amount, Diane suggested. If they fight it, we can escalate. By the time my support team left, I had a clear path forward. Diane would send a formal demand letter. I would continue my radio silence with James until I was emotionally ready for contact. 3 more days passed. I settled into a routine, finding comfort in my work and new home. The calls from James became less frequent but more desperate. Then, on Saturday morning, another knock at my door. This time, it was James who stood in the hallway. Alone. His face was haggard, eyes bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom," he said, voice cracking. "Please, can we talk?" Part of me wanted to refuse, to make him feel the rejection I had experienced. But the mother in me couldn't turn away from my child in pain. 20 minutes, I said, stepping aside to let him in. James stood awkwardly in the center of my small living room, taking in the sparse furnishings, the few familiar items from my old life. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Your letter. You included your new address." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Mom, I don't know where to begin." "The truth would be a good start," I suggested, gesturing for him to sit. He sank onto the couch, shoulders slumped. "Everything's falling apart. After you left, I started looking into our accounts. The things you mentioned in your letter. I found more. So much more." "What things, James?" "Gambling," he said, the word barely audible. "Tara's been gambling for years. Online mostly. Thousands of dollars. That's where your credit card charges went. And our savings. And—" he swallowed hard. "Most of your down payment money." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Gambling? All this time?" He nodded miserably. "She hid it well. Separate accounts I didn't know about. Cash withdrawals. She'd tell me one amount for our bills, but actually pay less and pocket the difference for gambling. Why didn't you see the statements?" "The withdrawals?" "She handled all the finances. Said it stressed me out too much." He gave a bitter laugh. "And I let her. It was easier." "And the way she treated me? Was that also about hiding her addiction?" James looked up, his eyes filled with shame. "She needed to isolate me. From you, from our friends, anyone who might notice what was happening. She convinced me you were interfering, trying to control us. Then that you were becoming forgetful, unreliable, and you believed her. It wasn't a question. I wanted to believe we were building something good, that the money stress was temporary, that the person I married was still in there somewhere." A tear slid down his cheek. "I failed you, Mom. I failed myself." I sat silently, processing this new information. My anger at James hadn't disappeared, but it was now mixed with compassion for the depth of betrayal he too had experienced. "What happens now?" I asked finally. "We're separating. I'm staying with a college friend for now. Tara says she wants to get help, but," he shrugged helplessly. "There's so much damage, including $30,000 of my retirement savings." I reminded him. "I know. I'm going to pay you back, every cent. It might take time, but I promise." I studied my son's face, looking for the boy I'd raised. Behind the exhaustion and shame, I could still see him, the child who had always owned his mistakes, who had a generous heart beneath his recent failures. "I believe you'll try," I said. "But James, I can't come back. Not to live with you, not even if Tara leaves. That chapter is closed." "I understand," he whispered. "I just hope someday you can forgive me." As he prepared to leave, he paused at the door. "You deserve better than what we did to you. Dad would be so ashamed of me. Your father would want you to make things right," I replied. "Starting with being honest with yourself about how we got here." After James left, I sat for a long time, staring out the window at the spring leaves unfurling on the tree outside. The conversation had answered questions but opened new wounds. My son had been manipulated, yes, but he had also chosen weakness over courage, again and again. Forgiveness might come eventually, but trust would take much longer to rebuild. 1 month after leaving James and Tara's house, my new life had taken shape. My apartment, though small, felt like a sanctuary. Martha had helped me find affordable secondhand furniture. Doug's wife, Karen, back from visiting her mother, had brought plants and curtains. Judy had stayed for 2 weeks before returning to Florida, but called daily. I'd started therapy with Dr. Helen Bennett, a warm, straightforward woman who specialized in helping people recover from family trauma. "It's not just about what happened with James and Tara," she explained during one session. "It's about giving yourself permission to prioritize your own well-being after a lifetime of putting others first." Legally, things were progressing too. With Diane's help, I'd initiated a formal mediation process to recover my investment in the house. James had agreed immediately, taking responsibility for the debt. Tara had initially resisted but eventually consented when her alternatives were explained. At school, I threw myself into end-of-year activities with renewed energy. My sixth graders were preparing for their transition to middle school, and I wanted to send them off with confidence in their abilities and themselves. "Miss Peterson," Travis asked during our final literature circle, "will you still be teaching next year? Amber said you might retire." "I'll be right here," I assured him. "Room 117, same as always." The relief on their faces warmed my heart. To be needed, to make a difference, these had always been my greatest rewards. In late May, Lincoln Elementary held its annual academic awards ceremony. I sat in the auditorium, applauding as my students received recognition for their achievements. Principal Doug surprised me by calling me to the stage. "This year," he announced, "we're presenting a special award for teaching excellence to someone who exemplifies everything an educator should be." For 42 years, Eileen Peterson has shaped not just young minds, but young hearts. As I accepted the plaque amid thunderous applause, I spotted a familiar figure at the back of the auditorium. James, standing quietly, clapping with the others. Our eyes met briefly, before I returned to my seat. He was waiting outside when the ceremony ended. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said. "Doug told me about the award." "It's fine," I replied, noting how much healthier he looked. "How are you doing?" "Better. I'm seeing a therapist. Dealing with a lot of things I've been avoiding." He hesitated. "Tara and I are divorcing. It's for the best." I nodded, unsurprised. "And how is she?" "In treatment for the gambling. 90-day residential program. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She asked if she could see you when she completes the program." The request caught me off guard. Why would she want to see me? Part of recovery is making amends, but you don't have to agree. "I'll think about it," I said, not ready to commit either way. As we parted, James handed me an envelope. "The first payment," he explained. "It's not much, but it's a start." I accepted it with mixed emotions. The money mattered, but more important was the recognition of the wrong done and the commitment to making it right. 3 weeks later, as June bloomed hot and fragrant, I received an unexpected visitor. The knock came on a Saturday morning as I watered my new windowsill herbs. When I opened the door, Tara stood there. She looked different. Thinner, no makeup, the designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a t-shirt. And in her hands, which were visibly trembling, was a letter. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its former confidence. I hesitated, then stepped aside. Self-respect didn't mean I couldn't hear her out. She sat perched on the edge of my couch, clearly uncomfortable. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see." "Not the last," I replied, "but close." A small, sad smile crossed her face. "Fair enough." She placed the letter on the coffee table between us. "This is my formal amends letter. They make us write them in treatment. But I wanted to deliver mine in person, to show I mean it." "I'm listening," I said, making no move toward the letter. "I was horrible to you," she began simply. "Cruel. Manipulative. I used you financially, and then tried to push you out when I was afraid you'd discover my addiction. I told myself you were the problem, because it was easier than facing what I was doing." Her hands trembled more visibly. "The gambling started before I met James. I thought I had it under control. Then we bought the house. And the pressure of the mortgage, of maintaining appearances," she trailed off. "That's not an excuse. There is no excuse." "No," I agreed. "There isn't. The things I said about you being confused, about your mental state, that was the worst. I was setting you up to discredit you if you figured out what was happening with the money." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I'm so deeply ashamed of that." I sat silently, letting her words hang in the air between us. Part of me appreciated her honesty. Another part remembered the humiliation of finding the pantry locked. of being treated like an intruder in what should have been my home. "Why did you come today, Tara? What do you want from me?" "Nothing," she said immediately. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect you to believe I've changed. I just wanted you to hear directly from me that I know what I did, and I'm facing it. The gambling, the lies, the cruelty, all of it." She stood to leave. "I'm continuing treatment as an outpatient, getting a job, trying to make things right, starting with James and you. It won't be easy," I observed. "The counselors say rebuilding trust takes much longer than destroying it." She moved toward the door. "I understand if you never want to see me again, but if someday you're open to it, I'd like to try to make amends in actions, not just words." After she left, I finally picked up her letter. 8 pages of detailed acknowledgement of her wrongs, with no excuses or justifications. It couldn't erase what happened, but it was a start. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party in my apartment. James came, along with Martha and Dave, Doug and Karen and Diane. We crowded around my table, passing dishes and sharing stories. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and occasional deep reflection. "A toast," Doug proposed, raising his glass. "To Eileen, who taught us all that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. And to new beginnings," Martha added. "To boundaries," I said, meeting James's eyes across the table. He nodded, understanding. The following week, a young teacher named Sarah stopped by my classroom after school. She looked nervous, twisting her wedding ring. "Miss Peterson, could I ask your advice? It's personal." She proceeded to tell me about moving in with her in-laws after her husband lost his job. The subtle undermining, the increasing restrictions, the feeling of powerlessness in someone else's home. "I don't know what to do," she confessed. "I feel like I'm losing myself a little more each day." I recognized in her the same conflict I had faced. The desire to keep peace weighed against the need for dignity. Taking her hands in mine, I shared my story. The pantry lock. The painful choice to leave. The hard road of rebuilding. "The most important thing I learned," I told her, "is that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's essential. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others is to say, 'This isn't acceptable anymore.'" As we talked through her options, I saw my own journey reflected in her eyes, the fear giving way to resolve, the awakening of possibility. Life continues to unfold in ways I never expected. James and I meet weekly for coffee, slowly rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. My $30,000 is being repaid in monthly installments. Tara continues her recovery program, and though I'm not ready for a relationship with her, I no longer harbor bitterness. My apartment has become a true home, filled with books and plants and friends who drop by unannounced. No locked pantries, no walking on eggshells, just peace and the quiet joy of living authentically. Sometimes the hardest lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages. I learned that I am stronger than I knew. That family is defined by actions, not just blood. That it's never too late to reclaim your dignity and your voice. If you're facing your own pantry lock, whatever form it may take, know that you deserve better. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you treat yourself. Don't wait until dawn to remove what confines you. Your sunrise is waiting. Have you ever faced a situation where you needed to establish boundaries with family? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. And if you know someone who might need this message, share it with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find the courage to write your own ending when necessary. And may all your new beginnings be blessed with peace and self-respect.